The boardroom collision.
When Sophie Miller walked into that boardroom carrying adoption papers, she never expected to see him, the man who disappeared after their one perfect night together. Now he's offering her $50 million to marry him and pretend their baby doesn't exist. What she did next shocked everyone. Before we begin, write in the comments what city you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy watching. Sophie Miller clutches the manila envelope against her chest as she steps into the marble lobby of Sterling Industries. The 40-story glass tower makes her feel tiny in her worn jeans and faded sweater. She checks her phone, 2:30 p.m., exactly on time for the adoption meeting.
The elevator ride to the 38th floor feels endless.
Sophie's hands shake as she thinks about the papers inside the envelope. 3 months old, and she's already considering giving up her son. The bills keep piling up, her part-time job barely covers rent, and James deserves better than her tiny studio apartment.
Mrs. Miller.
A polished receptionist smiles at her. They're ready for you in conference room A. Sophie nods and follows the woman down a hallway lined with expensive artwork. Her heart pounds as they approach the glass door. Through it, she can see several people in business suits sitting around a long table. The receptionist opens the door. Mrs. Miller is here. Sophie steps inside, focusing on the adoption agency representative she recognizes from their previous meeting. But as her eyes sweep the room, time stops. There, at the head of the table in a charcoal suit that probably costs more than her monthly rent, sits the man from 18 months ago. The man who held her like she was precious.
The man who disappeared without a trace. Alexander Sterling.
The envelope slips from her fingers, adoption papers scattering across the polished floor.
Sophie.
His voice is exactly as she remembers. Deep, controlled, but there's something different now.
Something broken. She can't breathe. Can't think.
The room spins as she stares into those steel-gray eyes that have haunted her dreams. You two know each other? Asks Mrs. Henderson from the adoption agency. Alexander stands slowly, his jaw tight. We've met.
Sophie's shock transforms into white anger. You bastard.
The lawyers shift uncomfortably, but Sophie doesn't care. All the pain, all the sleepless nights wondering why he left, all the time she stared at James and saw his father's eyes, it all crashes over her. You've been watching us, she whispers, the pieces clicking together. The anonymous payments to the hospital. The mysterious benefactor who covered James's medical bills. That was you.
Alexander's composure cracks for just a moment.
Sophie, let me explain. Explain what? How you disappeared after telling me I was special.
You left me pregnant and alone.
Her voice rises, and she doesn't care who's listening. How you've been playing puppet master with my son's life. Our son.
The words hang in the air like a bomb.
Mrs. Henderson gasps. The lawyers exchange glances. Sophie's legs threaten to give out.
How long have you known?
Since the day he was born. The admission hits her like a physical blow. She turns toward the door, desperate to escape, but Alexander moves faster.
Sophie, wait. She whirls around, tears streaming down her face.
Wait. I waited for you. I waited for 3 months for you to call, to come back, to explain that stupid note you left.
You deserve better than my word.
What kind of coward does that? The kind who was trying to protect you. From what? From being loved. From being happy.
She laughs bitterly.
Well, congratulations. You succeeded. I've been miserable. Alexander flinches like she slapped him.
He never wanted to hurt you.
But you did.
And now you what? Want to adopt your own son?
Pretend he's not yours so you can sleep better at night. It's not like that. Then what is it like, Alexander? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you want to buy your way out of responsibility.
The room is dead silent.
Alexander moves closer, and Sophie can smell his cologne, the same one that lingered on her skin that magical night. Marry me, he says quietly.
Sophie's mouth falls open. What kind of press conference?
The kind designed to destroy my reputation and our marriage.
Alexander's jaw tightens. She has found something, Sophie.
Something she thinks will prove our relationship is fake. Before Sophie can respond, Alexander's phone buzzes. He checks it and his face goes pale.
What is it? Christina.
She wants to meet for coffee. Says it's urgent. Sophie's stomach drops. You think she's working with Victoria?
I don't know.
But I need to find out. Alexander looks at her intently.
Will you come with me?
To meet your ex-fiancé? Are you sure that's a good idea? I'm sure I don't want to face whatever this is without you. An hour later, they're sitting in an upscale cafe downtown, James sleeping peacefully in his stroller between them. Christina arrives looking perfectly put together as always, but there's something different about her expression, something almost guilty. Thank you for coming, she says, sliding into the booth across from them. Her eyes linger on Alexander's hand covering Sophie's on the table. I see the rumors about your reconciliation are true.
What rumors?
Sophie asks. Christina pulls out her phone and shows them a gossip blog post titled, Sterling's Second Chance at Love. Inside sources say marriage is real after all. Someone's been talking to the press about your relationship, painting it as a genuine love story that started 18 months ago. Christina's tone is carefully neutral. Very romantic.
Alexander and Sophie exchange glance.
They never spoke to any reporters. Why are you showing us this? Alexander asks.
Christina takes a deep breath.
Because Victoria Blackwood offered me $50,000 to confirm that your marriage is fake. Sophie's heart stops. What did you tell her? Nothing. Yet. Christina looks directly at Sophie. But she's not going to stop, Sophie. She has photographs of you at the adoption agency. She has financial records showing Alexander's payments during your pregnancy. She's building a case that this whole thing is an elaborate scheme to secure his inheritance. It doesn't matter what she thinks she can prove, Alexander says coldly. The marriage is legal. But is it real?
Christina esse question hangs in the air. Sophie feels Alexander esse and tighten over hers.
This is their moment of truth. Do they keep pretending, or do they trust Christina with their secret? Yes, Sophie says firmly. It's real. Christina studies her face for a long moment, then nods.
I believe you.
Which is why I'm here. She pulls a flash drive from her purse and slides it across the table. Victoria's been having you both followed for weeks. These are copies of all her files, photos, financial records, witness statements. Everything she plans to use against you.
Alexander stares at the flash drive.
Why would you help us? Because despite everything between us, I care about you, Alexander. And because Victoria Blackwood is a vindictive witch who destroys people for sport.
Christina glances at James.
That little boy deserves better than having his parentage splashed across tabloids.
What does Victoria want from you?
Sophie asks. She wants me to go on record saying you and Alexander never seemed like a real couple. That he was clearly still in love with me. Christina's smile is rueful. The irony is, watching you two together these past few weeks, I can see something I never had with him. Which is?
Real love. The messy, complicated, all-consuming kind.
Christina stands to leave. Alexander was always holding back with me. Controlled, careful, keeping parts of himself locked away. But with you. She looks at Sophie. With you, he's completely unguarded. That's not something you can fake. After Christina leaves, Sophie and Alexander sit in stunned silence. We need to get ahead of this, Alexander says finally. Whatever Victoria's planning, we can't let her control the narrative. What do you suggest?
We tell our story first. The real story.
Sophie's heart pounds. All of it.
The one-night stand, the pregnancy, the fake marriage proposal.
All of it. We show them that real love is complicated and messy and doesn't always follow a straight line. Alexander, if we do this, there's no going back.
The whole world will know the truth.
Good. I'm tired of hiding, Sophie. I'm tired of pretending our love story is something to be ashamed of. They drive home in tense silence, both lost in thought. As they pull into their driveway, Sophie sees Maya's car already there. Maya meets them at the door, her face grim. We have a problem. Victoria's press conference moved up to noon, and she's releasing a preview to build buzz. She hands Sophie her phone. The gossip site now shows a photo of Sophie at the adoption agency with a headline that makes her blood run cold. Billionaire's wife tried to give away his baby, marriage of convenience exposed. They're going to destroy us, Sophie whispers. Not if we don't let them, Alexander says firmly. He pulls out his own phone and starts dialing.
Richard, it's Alexander.
I need you to set up a live interview for this morning.
Every major network.
Sophie stares at him. What are you doing? Something I should have done 18 months ago. I'm fighting for what I want instead of running away from it. The next few hours are a whirlwind of preparation. Alexander's PR team arrives to help craft their message while Sophie tries to calm her nerves. They decide to do the interview from their home, in the garden where Alexander was playing with James that first morning.
Are you ready for this?
Alexander asks as the camera crew finishes setting up. Sophie looks at their beautiful home, at James playing on a blanket nearby, at the man she loves despite everything they've been through.
As ready as you ever be.
The interviewer is Sarah Chen, a respected journalist known for her fair but thorough questioning. She starts with the basics, how they met, their whirlwind romance, the unexpected pregnancy. Mr. Sterling, why did you leave Sophie when she was pregnant? Alexander's hand finds Sophie's, and she sees him make the choice to be completely honest. Because I was a coward, he says simply. I was 23, terrified of becoming like my father, and convinced I would destroy anything beautiful in my life. So I ran, thinking I was protecting Sophie from me. But you kept tabs on her? I couldn't stay away completely. I hired investigators to make sure she and James were safe and healthy. I paid her medical bills anonymously. I told myself I was helping from a distance.
And the marriage proposal?
Ms. Miller, when Alexander offered you $50 million to marry him, what was your reaction?
Sophie takes a deep breath.
Anger. Hurt. But also, hope. Because despite everything, I never stopped loving him. So this was never about Alexander's inheritance? The inheritance was a factor, Alexander admits. But by the time I made the proposal, it wasn't about the money anymore. It was about finding a way to keep my family together, even if I was too scared to admit I wanted a real marriage. When did that change? Sophie and Alexander look at each other, sharing a smile. When I realized that Sophie was braver than I was, Alexander says. She was willing to fight for our family when I was still hiding behind contracts and legal arrangements. She made me want to be worthy of her courage. The interviewer spends another 20 minutes asking about their current relationship, their plans for the future, their response to Victoria Blackwood's allegations. The truth is complex, Sophie says. Our love story isn't a fairy tale. It's messy and complicated, and we made mistakes. But it's real. Our son is real. Our commitment to each other is real. And to those who say this is all an elaborate performance, Alexander looks directly into the camera. I can't control what people choose to believe. I can only tell you that I love my wife and son more than my own life. Everything else is just noise. As the interview wraps up, Sophie feels a weight lifting from her shoulders. Whatever happens now, they've told the truth. They don't have to wait long for Victoria's response. Her press conference, now clearly upstaged, is a bitter affair where she makes increasingly desperate accusations that sound hollow after Alexander and Sophie's honest interview. The public isn't buying it, Maya reports, scrolling through social media. The response to your interview is overwhelmingly positive. People are calling it brave and refreshingly honest. But Sophie barely hears her. She's watching Alexander play with James on the living room floor, seeing the pure joy on both their faces, and realizing something important. We did it, she says quietly. Did what? Alexander looks up from where he's making James giggle. We chose each other. Despite the fear, despite the complications, despite everything that could go wrong, we chose love. Alexander gets up and pulls her into his arms.
Best choice uno ever made.
As he kisses her, Sophie thinks about how different this moment is from their first kiss 18 months ago. That was passion and possibility. This is deeper. It's commitment, it's partnership, it's the choice to keep choosing each other every day.
So what now?
Sophie asks.
Now we'll live happily ever after.
Alexander suggests with a grin. I don't think it works that way. No, but we can try. Outside, rain starts to fall, but inside their home, surrounded by love and laughter and the promise of tomorrow, Sophie has never felt warmer.
The $1 million ultimatum.
Sophie's hands shake as she fumbles with her apartment key. The tiny studio feels even smaller after the opulence of Sterling Industries. She tosses Alexander's business card on her kitchen counter and stares at it like it might explode. James is sleeping peacefully in his crib, tiny fists curled against his cheeks. Sophie's heart breaks looking at him. He has Alexander's dark hair, his strong jawline already evident even at 3 months old. She's been trying to deny the resemblance, but seeing them in the same room today made it impossible. A knock at the door makes her jump.
Through the peephole, she sees Maya's familiar red curls.
Thank God.
Sophie yanks the door open and falls into her best friend's arms.
Soph, what happened? You sounded hysterical on the phone. Maya kicks the door closed behind her, taking in Sophie's tear-stained face. Did the adoption meeting go badly? Sophie laughs, but it comes out broken. You could say that.
Talk to me.
Sophie collapses on her second-hand couch, pulling her knees to her chest. He was there, Maya.
James's father.
He was at the meeting.
Maya's eyes widen. Mystery man from the charity gala. The one-night stand who vanished.
His name is Alexander Sterling.
As in Sterling Industries. As in billionaire Alexander Sterling. Holy shit.
Maya sinks down beside her. Wait, he was at the adoption meeting? That means... He wants to adopt his own son. And he wants me to marry him so no one finds out James is his biological child.
Maya stares at her.
I'm sorry, what? Before Sophie can answer, another knock echoes through the apartment. This time it's firm, authoritative. Sophie peeks through the peephole and her heart stops. Alexander stands in the hallway, looking completely out of place in the run-down building. He's changed out of his suit into dark jeans and a black sweater, but he still looks like he stepped out of a magazine. Don't answer it, Maya hisses. But Sophie's already opening the door. Something about seeing Alexander in her world, her space, makes her brave. How did you find my address? I've always known where you lived. His eyes flick to Maya, then back to Sophie. We need to talk. She doesn't need to talk to you, Maya stands, crossing her arms. She needs you to leave her alone. Alexander's jaw tightens, but his voice remains calm.
And you are her best friend.
The one who held her hair while she threw up every morning for 3 months. The one who drove her to the hospital when she went into labor alone. Sophie sees Alexander flinch at the word alone, but his expression doesn't change. Maya, it's okay. Sophie touches her friend's arm. I need to hear what he has to say. Alexander steps into the apartment, and the space immediately feels cramped. His presence fills every corner, making Sophie acutely aware of the peeling paint, the second-hand furniture, the pile of unpaid bills on her kitchen counter. Nice place, he says, and Sophie can't tell if he's being sarcastic. It's what I can afford. Alexander pulls out a leather portfolio and sets it on her coffee table. It doesn't have to be. He opens the portfolio, revealing legal documents and something that makes Sophie's knees go weak, a check with more zeros than she's ever seen. $50 million, Alexander says simply. And that's just the signing bonus. Maya gasps.
Sophie just stares at the number.
You're serious about this insane marriage proposal?
Dead serious.
Alexander sits across from her, his elbows on his knees. Let me explain something about my family, Sophie.
The sterling fortune comes with strings.
Big ones.
What kind of strings?
My father is old-fashioned. Traditional. The family fortune only passes to heirs who can produce the next generation.
Alexander's voice is bitter.
I have until my 35th birthday, 6 months from now, to either marry and produce an heir, or lose everything to my cousin Richard. So find a wife and have a baby, Maya snaps.
Don't drag Sophie into your family drama. Alexander's eyes never leave Sophie's face.
I already have a son.
The perfect heir.
He just needs the right legal framework. You mean he needs you to erase his real mother from the picture? Not erase.
Reimagine. Alexander leans forward.
Think about it, Sophie. James would grow up with every advantage. The best schools, the best opportunities. He'd never want for anything, except his mother's love. He'd have that too.
You'd be there, as my wife. Your fake wife. Alexander S. Pause is telling.
The marriage would be real in every legal sense, but not in any way that matters. Sophie stands and walks to James's crib. Her son sleeps peacefully, unaware that his future is being decided around him.
What about what you want, Alexander?
Did it ever occur to you to ask what I want?
What do you want? The question hangs in the air.
Sophie wants so many things: to finish art school, to give James a stable home, to feel secure for the first time in her life. But mostly, she wants the man who held her so tenderly 18 months ago to be real instead of this cold businessman offering to buy her son.
You want James to be happy.
I want him to be loved. He will be. By you. You, who abandoned us both without a second thought. Alexander stands abruptly, running his hands through his dark hair.
He didn't abandon you, Sophie. He saved you.
From what? From me.
From my word. From a family that destroys everything beautiful.
His mask slips, and for a moment Sophie sees the pain underneath. Every sterling man has a curse, Sophie.
We destroy what we love most.
My grandfather drove my grandmother to suicide. My father crushed my mother's spirit until she died of a broken heart. I won't do that to you. So instead you'll buy me like a business transaction?
He'll protect you.
And James. This way, you both get what you need, and I don't have to risk. He stops. Risk what? But the mask is back. You have 24 hours to decide. He moves toward the door, then pauses and pulls something from his pocket, a single white rose, perfect and pristine.
You remembered, Sophie whispers. He remember everything.
He sets the rose on her counter and walks out, leaving Sophie staring after him.
Maya breaks the silence.
Please tell me you're not actually considering this. Sophie picks up the white rose, remembering another night, another man who seemed to care about her dreams and fears. But that man was an illusion, wasn't he?
$50 million, Maya.
James would never have to worry about anything.
And what about you? What about love? What about happiness?
Sophie looks at her sleeping son, then at the check on her coffee table. Maybe love is a luxury I can't afford. The night that changed everything. Sophie sits in her rocking chair, holding the white rose as James sleeps in her arms. Maya left an hour ago after trying to convince her that marrying Alexander would be a mistake, but Sophie can't shake the memory of how different he seemed 18 months ago. She closes her eyes and lets herself remember. The charity gala at the Grand Plaza Hotel is overwhelming. Sophie adjusts her black server uniform and balances the heavy tray of champagne glasses, trying to blend into the background. The ballroom is filled with New York's elite, women in designer gowns and men in expensive tuxedos. She's working her way through the crowd when a large hand grabs her wrist.
You're not moving fast enough, sweetheart.
The man's breath reeks of alcohol and his grip is too tight. I've been waiting 5 minutes for my drink. I'm sorry, sir. I was just dash. I don't want excuses.
He wants service.
The lady said she was sorry. Sophie looks up to see a tall man in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo. His dark hair is slightly mussed, and his gray eyes are cold as steel as he stares down the drunk guest. This doesn't concern you, the drunk man slurs. Actually, it does.
Take your hands off her.
The drunk man releases Sophie's wrist and stumbles away, muttering under his breath. Sophie rubs her wrist, embarrassed. Thank you, but I could have handled it. The stranger smiles, and it transforms his entire face. I'm sure you could have. But sometimes it's nice to have backup. Sophie studies his face, trying to place him. He's probably 32 or 33, with sharp features and an easy confidence that suggests he's used to being in control. There's something magnetic about him, something that makes her pulse quicken.
I'm Alexander. Sophie.
She realizes she's still holding her tray. I should get back to work.
Take a break.
You look like you could use some air. I can't. I need this job. Alexander glances around the ballroom, then back at her. Trust me. 5 minutes. Before she can protest, he's guiding her through the crowd toward a set of French doors that lead to a terrace. The cool night air is a relief after the stuffy ballroom. Better? Alexander asks. Sophie nods, setting her tray on a nearby table. Much. Thank you. So, Sophie, who needs this job, what's your story? She shouldn't be talking to him. She should be working. But something about the way he's looking at her, like she's the only person in the world, makes her want to stay. Art student at NYU. Well, former art student. I had to drop out when my scholarship fell through. That's rough.
What kind of art?
Painting, mostly. Abstract expressionism. She laughs self-consciously. I know it's impractical. Art isn't about being practical. It's about truth. Sophie looks at him sharply. Most people dismiss her art as a hobby, but Alexander speaks like he understands.
Do you paint?
No, but my mother did. She used to say that artists see the world differently, that you notice things other people miss. Used to.
Alexander's expression grows distant.
She died when I was 15. I'm sorry. She would have liked you, he says quietly. She always said the most beautiful art came from struggle. They stand in comfortable silence, looking out over the city lights. Sophie feels like she could talk to this man for hours. What about you? She asks. What do you do when you're not rescuing waitresses from drunk businessmen? This and that.
Import, export. Pretty boring stuff.
Something in his tone suggests there's more to the story, but Sophie doesn't push. Everyone deserves their secrets. Would you like to see the view from upstairs? Alexander asks suddenly. Sophie knows she should say no. She doesn't know this man, and she's working. But there's something about him that makes her feel safe and reckless at the same time. Yes. He leads her to a private elevator, and they ride up in silence.
When the doors open, Sophie gasps.
They're in a penthouse apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park.
Is this yours? For tonight.
He opens a bottle of wine and pours 2 glasses, then leads her to the balcony. The city spreads out below them like a glittering tapestry.
It's beautiful, Sophie breathes. You're beautiful.
Sophie turns to find Alexander watching her with an intensity that makes her heart race. You don't even know me. I know you're brave enough to work 2 jobs to pay for school.
I know you see beauty in chaos.
I know you have paint under your fingernails because you can't stop creating, even when you're broke.
He steps closer. I know you taste like strawberries and champagne. Alexander.
He cups her face in his hands, and Sophie forgets how to breathe. Tell me to stop. But she can't. Instead, she rises on her toes and kisses him. The kiss is soft at first, tentative. Then Alexander pulls her closer and Sophie melts against him. She's never felt anything like this immediate, consuming need. They spend the night talking and kissing and sharing their deepest dreams. Alexander tells her about the pressure of expectations, about feeling trapped in a life he never chose. Sophie tells him about her parents' death, about feeling alone in the world, about her dream of painting something that matters. When they make love, it's gentle and passionate and perfect. Sophie feels like she's found her missing piece. She falls asleep in his arms, feeling safer than she has in years. But when she wakes up, he's gone. The only trace of him is a note on the pillow. You deserve better than my world.
James stirs in Sophie's arms, pulling her back to the present.
She looks down at her son's peaceful face and sees Alexander in every feature. She trusted him once. She let him into her heart, into her body, into her soul. And he left her with nothing but heartbreak and a baby she wasn't prepared for. Now he's back, offering her everything she thought she wanted: security, stability, a future for James. But at what cost? Sophie gets up and places James in his crib, then walks to her easel in the corner. She hasn't painted in months, not since James was born and life became about survival instead of creation. But tonight, She picks up a brush and loses herself in swirls of gray and blue, painting the storm of emotions in her chest. She paints until the sun rises, until Maya arrives with coffee and determination to talk sense into her. "Have you decided?" Maya asks, studying the painting. Sophie wipes paint from her hands and looks at the check still sitting on her coffee table. $50 million.
A lifetime of security for James.
"Yes," she says quietly. "I have." The contract signing. Sophie stands before the imposing gates of the Sterling mansion, James's car seat heavy in her hand. The sprawling estate looks like something from a movie. Manicured gardens, a circular driveway, and a house that could fit 50 of her apartments. She's dressed in her best outfit, a simple black dress Maya lent her and her only pair of heels. It's not much, but it's better than her usual jeans and t-shirt. A security guard opens the gate after she gives her name, and Sophie walks up the long driveway, her heart pounding with each step. She's made her decision, but that doesn't make it any easier. Alexander opens the front door before she can knock. He's wearing a navy suit that emphasizes his broad shoulders, and his gray eyes are unreadable as he takes in her appearance. "You came. I said I would." He steps aside to let her in, and Sophie's breath catches. The foyer is massive, with a crystal chandelier and a sweeping staircase that belongs in a palace. Everything screams wealth and privilege, the exact opposite of her world. "This is where James would grow up," Alexander says, watching her reaction. Sophie tries to imagine her son crawling across these marble floors, playing in these pristine rooms. It's everything she ever wanted for him, but it feels cold somehow. "Before we discuss terms, I need to know something," Sophie says. "Why did you really leave that morning?"
Alexander S. Joe Titans.
"I told you dash. You told me I deserved better than your world. But what does that mean, exactly?" Alexander is quiet for a long moment, then gestures toward a sitting room.
Come. Sit.
The room is elegant but warmer than the foyer, with a fireplace and comfortable leather furniture. Alexander pours himself a drink from a crystal decanter but doesn't offer her one.
My father, Richard Sterling S.R., is not a good man, Alexander begins.
He's controlling, manipulative, and cruel. He drove my mother to an early grave with his constant criticism and impossible expectations. Sophie watches his face, seeing the pain he's trying to hide. Growing up, I watched him destroy everything he touched. Business partners, employees, family. Love was just another tool for control in his hands. "So you decided to be different?"
Alexander laughs bitterly.
"I decided to avoid the trap altogether. No serious relationships, no emotional attachments. It was working perfectly until...
Until me. Until you.
His eyes meet hers.
You were different, Sophie. Real.
Genuine.
Everything my word SNT.
And I knew if I stayed, I'd end up destroying that. So you thought abandoning me was the noble thing to do? I thought keeping you away from this dash," he gestures around the opulent room, "was protecting you. And now I realize I was protecting myself." His honesty surprises her. "I was a coward, Sophie. I ran because I was falling in love with you, and that terrified me more than anything my father ever did." The admission hangs in the air between them. Sophie's heart clenches, but she forces herself to stay focused. If that's true, why this arrangement? Why not just try again? Alexander sets down his drink and moves to the window.
Because some things don't change.
I'm still my father's son. I still carry his blood, his genes, his potential for destruction. This way, you're protected by a contract instead of promises I might not be able to keep. Before Sophie can respond, the doorbell rings. Alexander checks his watch. That'll be the lawyers.
And the wedding planner. Wedding planner.
We'll need to move quickly if we're going to satisfy my father's requirements. The next hour is a whirlwind of legal documents and wedding preparations. Sophie's head spins as lawyers explain prenuptials and custody agreements while a wedding planner shows her dress options and venue photos. "I want to add something to the contract," Sophie says suddenly. The lawyers look up from their papers.
Alexander raises an eyebrow.
"I want to finish art school."
And you want my own studio space.
"Done," Alexander says without hesitation. And I want separate bedrooms. This gives him pause, but he nods.
If that is what you need.
It is. The wedding planner, a efficient woman named Mrs. Patterson, spreads 3 dress options across the coffee table. One is an elaborate ball gown covered in crystals, another is a sleek mermaid style, and the third is a simple A-line dress with delicate lace sleeves. I'll take the simple one, Sophie says. But darling, Mrs. Patterson protests, for a sterling wedding, don't you want something more grand?
No.
Simple is fine. Alexander watches this exchange with interest. She said simple, Mrs. Patterson. As Sophie signs document after document, she hears James start to cry from his car seat. Before she can move, Alexander is there, carefully lifting her son into his arms. "Hey there, little man," he says softly. Sophie's heart stops. Alexander holds James like he's made of glass, his large hands supporting the baby's tiny body perfectly. James stops crying and stares up at his father with wide gray eyes exactly like Alexander's. "He looks like you," Sophie whispers. "He has your nose. And your stubborn chin." Despite everything, Sophie smiles. He gets that from both sides. Alexander traces James's tiny hand with one finger, and Sophie sees his carefully constructed walls crumble completely.
"I promise you," he whispers to the baby, "I'll never let anyone hurt you."
"You'll have everything I never did. Love, security, a father who puts you first." The raw emotion in his voice brings tears to Sophie's eyes. This is the man she fell in love with 18 months ago, vulnerable, caring, real. But then Alexander hands James back to her, and the mask slides into place again. "The wedding is scheduled for tomorrow at 2 o'clock, Mrs. Patterson announces. "Small ceremony, just family and necessary witnesses." "Tomorrow."
Sophie's voice cracks.
"The sooner we're married, the sooner we can file the adoption papers," Alexander explains. "My father's lawyers are already asking questions about the timeline." Sophie nods, feeling like she's being swept along by a tide she can't control. But as she looks at James sleeping peacefully in her arms, she knows she's making the right choice. Her son will have everything she never did, a loving father, financial security, and a future full of possibilities. Even if it means sacrificing her own dreams of love. "I'll see you tomorrow," she says to Alexander.
"Sophie."
His voice stops her at the door. "Are you sure about this?" She meets his eyes one last time, searching for any sign of the man who held her so tenderly. But all she sees is the controlled businessman who's about to become her husband. "As sure as I can be."
The fake wedding.
Sophie stares at herself in the mirror of Alexander's guest bedroom. The simple wedding dress fits perfectly, but she feels like she's wearing a costume for a play she never auditioned for. Mrs. Patterson bustles around her, making last-minute adjustments to her hair and makeup. "You look beautiful, dear," the wedding planner says, but Sophie can hear the pity in her voice. There's no joy in this room, no excitement or anticipation. Just the cold efficiency of a business transaction. A soft knock interrupts her thoughts.
"Come in."
To her surprise, it's Maya who enters, carrying a small bouquet of white roses.
"Maya, how did you? Alexander sent a car for me."
"He thought you might need a friend today." Maya's expression is carefully neutral, but Sophie can see the concern in her eyes. "You don't approve." "It's not my life to approve of."
Maya hands her the bouquet.
"But I love you, and I'll support whatever decision you make." Sophie accepts the flowers, inhaling their familiar scent. "He remembered what I liked." The question is, does he remember who you are underneath all this? Maya gestures around the opulent room. Before Sophie can answer, Mrs. Patterson claps her hands. "Time to go, ladies."
The groom is waiting.
They make their way downstairs to Alexander's study, which has been transformed into a makeshift chapel. It's a far cry from the church wedding Sophie always imagined. Just a handful of chairs, a few flowers, and a judge waiting behind Alexander's massive desk. Alexander stands near the window in a perfectly tailored black suit, his hands clasped behind his back. When he turns and sees Sophie, something flickers in his eyes, something that might be regret or longing or both. "You look beautiful," he says quietly as she joins him. "Thank you." The ceremony is brief and businesslike. The judge reads from a standard script while lawyers and witnesses watch from the sidelines. Sophie holds James in one arm and Alexander's hand with the other, feeling like she's floating outside her own body.
Do you, Alexander James Sterling, take Sophie Marie Miller to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do.
His voice is steady, controlled.
Do you, Sophie Marie Miller, take Alexander James Sterling to be your lawfully wedded husband?
Sophie looks into Alexander's eyes, searching for any trace of the man she fell in love with. For just a moment, his mask slips, and she sees vulnerability there.
I do.
By the power vested in me by the state of New York, I now pronounce you husband and wife.
You may kiss the bride.
Alexander hesitates for just a moment, then leans down and brushes his lips against hers. It's meant to be perfunctory, but Sophie feels the same electric spark she felt 18 months ago. Before the moment can deepen, the door bursts open. Well, well, what do we have here? Everyone turns to see a tall, elegant woman in a red power suit stride into the room, followed by two photographers with cameras.
Victoria.
Alexander's voice is ice-cold. Victoria Blackwood, Alexander's business rival and former board member, surveys the scene with calculating eyes. Her gaze lingers on Sophie's wedding dress, then moves to the baby in her arms.
A secret wedding. How romantic.
And is this the mysterious baby you've been so protective of? The photographers start snapping pictures, their flashes filling the room. Alexander steps in front of Sophie protectively.
Get out of my house, Victoria.
Oh, I don't think so.
This is too delicious.
Victoria's smile is predatory.
Alexander Sterling, confirmed bachelor, secretly marries a nobody and adopts a baby.
The press is going to love this story. Sophie's heart pounds as she realizes what this means. If Victoria exposes their arrangement, everything falls apart. Alexander loses his inheritance, James loses his security, and she loses the one chance she has to give her son a better life. Without thinking, Sophie steps around Alexander and faces Victoria directly. "You're right," she says clearly. "It is romantic." Before anyone can react, Sophie grabs Alexander by the lapels and pulls him down for a real kiss, passionate, desperate, and completely convincing. She pours 18 months of heartbreak and longing into that kiss, and to her surprise, Alexander responds with equal intensity. When they break apart, both are breathing hard. The photographers' cameras have been clicking non-stop. "We wanted a private ceremony," Sophie says, still in Alexander's arms. "But I suppose there's no hiding how much we love each other." Victoria's eyes narrow suspiciously.
Love.
How convenient that love appeared right when Alexander needed an heir. "Love doesn't follow schedules," Sophie replies. "And James isn't adopted. He's Alexander's biological son." "Our son."
A collective gasp goes up from the room.
This wasn't part of the plan, but Sophie knows it's the only way to make their story believable. Alexander stares at her in shock, but then he follows her lead. "Sophie and I have been together for over a year. We kept our relationship private to protect her from media scrutiny."
"And the adoption papers?"
Sophie thinks quickly. "Insurance. We wanted to make sure James was legally protected in case anything happened to me." Victoria looks skeptical, but the photographers are already uploading their photos. The damage is done, their story is out there. "This isn't over," Victoria says coldly, then sweeps out of the room with her photographers trailing behind. When the door closes, the room erupts in chaos. The lawyers are talking over each other about media strategies and damage control. Mrs. Patterson is fretting about the photos. Maya is staring at Sophie like she's lost her mind. But Sophie only has eyes for Alexander, who's looking at her with an expression she can't read. "That was..." He starts. "Necessary," Sophie finishes. "Now everyone believes we're a real couple who's been together for over a year. Your inheritance is safe." "Sophie, what you just did was protect our son."
"That is what mothers do."
Alexander nods slowly, but there's something new in his eyes when he looks at her. Something that might be respect. "We should probably go upstairs and figure out our story," Sophie says. "The press will be calling soon." As they leave the study together, Sophie can't shake the feeling that everything just changed. The kiss was supposed to be fake, but it felt more real than anything she's experienced in 18 months. And from the way Alexander keeps glancing at her, she's not the only one who felt it.
Playing house.
Sophie stands in the doorway of the master bedroom suite, feeling overwhelmed. The room is larger than her entire apartment, with a king-size bed, a sitting area, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens. The guest room is across the hall, Alexander says from behind her. It's already been prepared for you and James. Sophie nods, grateful that he's respecting her need for space. She's emotionally drained from the day's events, and the thought of sharing a bed with Alexander while their relationship is purely contractual feels impossible. Thank you, she says quietly. Alexander helps her move her few belongings to the guest room, which is still more luxurious than anywhere she's ever lived. There's a crib already set up for James, and Sophie wonders when he had time to arrange it. Mrs. Patterson ordered it this morning, Alexander explains, as if reading her thoughts, along with everything else James might need. Sophie looks around the room. There are diapers, formula, toys, clothes in every size. Everything a baby could possibly need.
You think of everything.
I try to. An uncomfortable silence stretches between them. They're married now, living in the same house, but they're still strangers in so many ways. I should let you get settled, Alexander says finally. Dinner is at 7 if you'd like to join me.
I'd like that.
After he leaves, Sophie feeds James and puts him down for a nap, then explores her new surroundings. The guest room has its own bathroom with a marble soaking tub, and Sophie decides to take advantage of it. She's been so focused on survival for months that the luxury of a long, hot bath feels almost decadent. As she soaks in the warm water, she tries to process everything that's happened. 24 hours ago, she was considering giving up her son. Now she's married to a billionaire and living in a mansion. It doesn't feel real. Around 6:30, she dresses in her best outfit, a simple blue dress, and takes James downstairs to find the dining room. The house is so big that she gets lost twice before finding it. Alexander is already waiting, and he's changed into dark jeans and a gray sweater that makes his eyes look almost silver. He looks more relaxed than she's ever seen him, and for a moment she catches a glimpse of the man from that magical night. I wasn't sure what you liked, he says, gesturing to the elegant table set for two. So I asked the cook to prepare a few different options. Sophie looks at the spread: grilled salmon, pasta primavera, fresh bread, and vegetables she can't even identify. It's more food than she usually eats in a week.
This is incredible.
Thank you. They sit across from each other, James's high chair between them. It should feel awkward, but somehow it doesn't. Alexander is a surprisingly attentive dinner companion, asking about her art and her dreams for the future. What kind of painting do you want to do when you go back to school? He asks. Abstract expressionism, mostly. I like the freedom of it, the way you can express emotion without being literal. My mother painted landscapes, Alexander says quietly.
Watercolors, mostly.
She said they were peaceful. Do you still have them? Some. They're in storage. He pauses.
Maybe someday show them to you.
Sophie's heart flutters at the possibility.
I'd like that.
James starts fussing in his high chair, and Alexander reaches over to hand him a toy. The gesture is so natural, so paternal, that Sophie has to look away. He likes you, she observes. He's easy to like. You're good with him.
Alexander's expression grows distant.
I never thought I'd be a father. I spent so many years avoiding it. Why? Because I was terrified I'd be like my father.
Cold, controlling, destructive.
He looks at James, who's now contentedly chewing on his toy. But looking at him, I can't imagine ever wanting to hurt him. You won't, Sophie says with certainty.
You're nothing like that.
How can you be so sure?
Because you care too much.
Your father sounds like a man who didn't care about anyone but himself.
You're the opposite.
Alexander meets her eyes across the table, and for a moment the air between them crackles with possibility. But then James drops his toy, breaking the spell. After dinner, Alexander shows Sophie around the house. It's enormous, 12 bedrooms, a library, a gym, and even a theater room. But what catches Sophie's attention is a room on the second floor that's been converted into an art studio. When did you do this? She breathes, taking in the easels, paints, and natural light streaming through the skylights. "This morning, after you signed the contract and mentioned wanting to paint again." Sophie walks through the space, touching the expensive brushes and professional-grade paints. It's everything she ever dreamed of having.
Alexander, this is too much. No, it's not enough.
His voice is rough with emotion. "I took 18 months of your life, Sophie. I missed your pregnancy, James's birth, his first smiles. This is the least I can do. You couldn't have known dash. I should have stayed. I should have trusted that what we had was worth fighting for." Sophie turns to face him, and the raw honesty in his expression takes her breath away. "Why didn't you?"
Because I'm a coward.
"Because I'd rather run than risk destroying something beautiful."
He steps closer.
"But I'm here now, and I'm going to spend every day proving that I'm worthy of the second chance you've given me." Before Sophie can respond, they hear James crying from the guest room. The moment is broken, but as they go upstairs to check on the baby, Sophie can't shake the feeling that something fundamental has shifted between them. Later that night, after James is asleep, Sophie paints for the first time in months. She loses herself in swirls of blue and gray, trying to capture the confusion of emotions in her chest. She's so absorbed in her work that she doesn't notice Alexander in the doorway until he speaks. "You're incredibly talented." Sophie jumps, nearly dropping her brush. "I didn't hear you come in. Sorry."
He saw the light under the door.
He studies the painting.
What is it?
"I don't know yet."
He just paint what he feel.
"And what do you feel?" Sophie looks at the canvas, seeing storm clouds and turbulent water and something that might be hope breaking through the darkness. Confused. Scared. But also hopeful. Alexander nods like he understands. "Would you like some company?"
He promise he'll be quiet.
Sophie hesitates, then nods. Alexander settles into a chair near the window, and they spend the next hour in comfortable silence, Sophie painting, Alexander reading on his phone. It's domestic and peaceful in a way Sophie never expected. When she finally sets down her brush, she realizes Alexander has fallen asleep in his chair, his phone forgotten in his lap. In sleep, his face loses its carefully controlled expression. He looks younger, more vulnerable. Sophie can see traces of the man who held her so tenderly 18 months ago. She finds a throw blanket and gently covers him, careful not to wake him up. As she does, Alexander murmurs something in his sleep that sounds like her name. Sophie's heart clenches. Whatever game they're playing, whatever contract they've signed, the connection between them is still there. The question is whether either of them is brave enough to admit it.
The jealousy game.
Sophie wakes to the sound of laughter drifting through her bedroom window. She peers outside to see Alexander in the garden with James, who's sitting in a bouncy seat while Alexander tends to the roses. "Good morning, sleepyhead," Alexander calls when he sees her. Sophie checks her phone. It's nearly 10 o'clock. She hasn't slept this late since before James was born. "Why didn't you wake me for his feeding?" "He was awake early, and you looked exhausted. I figured you could use the rest." Sophie hurries downstairs in her pajamas and robe, feeling guilty. But when she reaches the garden, James is clearly content, babbling at the flowers while Alexander talks to him about different types of roses. "He's been perfect," Alexander assures her. "We've been having a very serious discussion about horticulture." Despite her guilt, Sophie smiles. The sight of them together still makes her heart flutter in ways she tries to ignore.
He'll take over now.
"Actually, I was hoping you'd join us for breakfast. Mrs. Chen made enough food to feed an army." They eat on the terrace, pancakes, fresh fruit, and coffee that's better than anything Sophie has ever tasted. It feels almost normal, like they really are a family instead of two people bound by a contract. "I have to go into the office today," Alexander says as they finish eating. "There's a board meeting about the Blackwood situation." "Is Victoria going to be a problem?" "She's always a problem. But her pictures actually helped our story."
The press is calling our wedding the romance of the year. Sophie winces. "I'm sorry about yesterday."
"I know that wasn't part of the plan. Don't apologize. You were brilliant." Alexander's eyes are warm with admiration. "You saved us both."
A phone buzzing interrupts the moment.
Alexander frowns as he reads the message.
What is it? Christina's back from Paris. Christina.
My ex-fiancée.
We were engaged 2 years ago, but she broke it off when she got a modeling contract in Europe. Alexander's expression is carefully neutral. Apparently, she's seen the wedding photos and wants to congratulate me. Something cold settles in Sophie's stomach, but she keeps her voice light. That's nice of her. Is it? Before Sophie can answer, the doorbell rings. Alexander checks his phone again. That's probably my driver.
He should go.
He kisses James on the forehead, then hesitates before leaning down to kiss Sophie's cheek. It's a casual, husbandly gesture, but it makes Sophie's skin tingle.
He'll be home for dinner.
After he leaves, Sophie tries to focus on James and her painting, but she can't stop thinking about Christina. She Googles her and immediately wishes she hadn't. Christina Vale is stunning, tall, blonde, with the kind of effortless elegance that Sophie will never possess. The photos show her on red carpets, in fashion spreads, always looking perfect. And there are pictures of her with Alexander from 2 years ago. They look like they belong together, both beautiful, both wealthy, both part of a world Sophie will never truly fit into. Don't torture yourself, Maya says when she calls to check in. You're married to him now, not her. It's a fake marriage, Maya. If he wants to get back together with his ex-fiancée, there's nothing stopping him. Except the fact that he chose you. He chose James. I just came with the package. That evening, Sophie dresses carefully for dinner, choosing a black dress that Maya insisted she buy for occasions. She's not sure what kind of occasion this is, but she wants to look like she belongs in Alexander's world. Alexander arrives home with flowers, white roses for her and a small teddy bear for James. How was your day? Sophie asks as they sit down to dinner.
Long.
The board is concerned about Victoria's media attention. They think our sudden marriage makes the company look unstable. I'm sorry. It's not your fault. Victoria has been trying to undermine me for years.
Alexander pauses.
Christina stopped by the office. Sophie's fork freezes halfway to her mouth. Oh. She wanted to meet you. I told her you were busy with James, but she's persistent. She suggested we all have dinner this weekend. All of us. You, me, Christina, and her current boyfriend. She says she wants to welcome you to the family. Sophie's stomach churns. The last thing she wants is to have dinner with Alexander's perfect ex-fiancée. If you don't want to dash.
No, it's fine, Sophilies.
We should probably start socializing as a couple anyway.
Alexander studies her face.
You're sure? Absolutely. But Sophie spends the rest of the week dreading Saturday night. She agonizes over what to wear, finally settling on a navy blue dress that's elegant but not too formal. She practices conversations in the mirror, trying to sound confident and unaffected. The restaurant Alexander chooses is the kind of place Sophie has only seen in magazines. White tablecloths, crystal glasses, and prices that would cover her monthly rent. Christina is already waiting when they arrive, and she's even more stunning in person. Her blonde hair falls in perfect waves, her red dress hugs her model figure, and her smile is blindingly white.
Alexander.
She stands and kisses his cheek, her hand lingering on his arm just a moment too long.
You look wonderful. Christina, this is my wife, Sophie.
Christina turns to Sophie with a smile that doesn't reach her eyes.
So you're the mystery woman who captured Alexander's heart.
How lovely to finally meet you. Nice to meet you too, Sophie manages. Christina's boyfriend, Jean-Claude, is a French photographer who seems more interested in his wine than the conversation. Which leaves Sophie feeling like a third wheel as Christina monopolizes Alexander's attention.
Do you remember that little café Montmartre?
Christina asks, touching Alexander's hand. We spent hours there just talking about our dreams. That was a long time ago, Alexander says, but he doesn't pull his hand away. Not that long.
2 years feels like yesterday.
Sophie excuses herself to go to the restroom, needing a moment to compose herself. When she returns, Christina is showing Alexander photos on her phone. The Louvre exhibition was incredible. You would have loved it.
Sophie sits back down, feeling invisible.
Christina barely acknowledges her presence, directing all her conversation toward Alexander. And he doesn't seem to mind. Sophie's an artist too, Alexander says suddenly.
Oh, how wonderful!
Christina's tone is patronizing. Do you sell your work? I'm still in school, Sophie says quietly. Well, that's a nice hobby. Art is so therapeutic, isn't it?
The word beats Sophie like a slap.
She spent her entire adult life pursuing art, sacrificing everything for her passion, and Christina dismisses it like it's finger painting. It's not a hobby, Sophie says, her voice sharper than intended. It's my career. Of course, darling. I didn't mean to offend. But Sophie can see the calculation in Christina's eyes. She's marked Sophie as competition and found her lacking. The rest of dinner passes in a blur. Christina regales them with stories from Paris, casually mentioning mutual friends and shared memories with Alexander. By the time they leave, Sophie feels thoroughly diminished. She seems nice, Sophie says in the car, hating how petty she sounds. She's familiar, Alexander replies carefully. Is that good or bad?
Alexander glances at her.
Neither.
Just familiar.
But Sophie notices he doesn't say he's not interested. The next morning, Sophie is feeding James when she hears female laughter from downstairs. She peers out her window to see Christina in the garden with Alexander, admiring the roses.
Something snaps inside Sophie.
She's tired of feeling like an outsider in her own marriage, even if it is fake. She calls her art professor, Marcus, and asks if his offer for coffee is still open. Of course, Marcus says warmly. How about this afternoon? Perfect. I'll bring James.
When Alexander comes upstairs, Sophie is getting James ready to go out. Where are you going?
To meet a friend for coffee. Anyone I know? My art professor from NYU.
Marcus Chen. Something flickers in Alexander's eyes. The one who has been emailing you.
He's been checking on my progress. He wants to discuss my returning to school. I see. Sophie expects him to object, but he just nods. Have fun. Coffee with Marcus is exactly what Sophie needs. He treats her like the serious artist she is, discussing technique and artistic vision with the respect Christina couldn't be bothered to show. Your talent is remarkable, Sophie. You shouldn't let circumstances derail your education. Circumstances have a way of taking priority, Sophie says, bouncing James on her knee.
Beautiful baby.
He looks just like you. Sophie smiles, but doesn't correct him. Let Marcus think James looks like her instead of his absent father. When they return home, Alexander is in his study with the door closed. Sophie can hear him on a business call, his voice sharp with anger. She's giving James his bath when Alexander appears in the doorway. How was coffee? Lovely. Marcus thinks I should apply for readmission next semester. And what do you think?
Sophie meets his eyes in the mirror.
I think it's time I stopped putting my life on hold.
Something dangerous flashes in Alexander's expression.
Is that what you've been doing?
Putting your life on hold.
Haven't I? Alexander steps into the bathroom, his presence immediately making the space feel smaller.
You're my wife now, Sophie. This is your life. Your fake wife.
In your fake marriage. There's nothing fake about the legal documents you signed. James splashes in his bath, oblivious to the tension crackling between his parents.
Just like there is nothing fake about your feelings for Christina.
The words are out before Sophie can stop them.
Alexander's eyes narrow.
What's that supposed to mean? You should have seen yourself at dinner. And this morning in the garden. You lit up around her in a way you never do with me. Christina and I have history dash. Exactly. Alexander steps closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper.
Are you jealous, Sophie? Should he be?
Instead of answering, Alexander reaches around her to lift James from the bath, wrapping him in a fluffy towel. The movement brings him close enough that Sophie can feel his warmth, smell his cologne. Christina is my past, he says quietly. You and James are my present. But for how long?
Alexander's jaw tightens.
For as long as our contract stipulates. It's not the answer Sophie was hoping for, but it's honest. She takes James from him and carries him to his bedroom for pajamas and a bottle.
She is just settling into the rocking chair when she hears voices downstairs.
Through James's window, she sees Marcus's car in the driveway. Her heart stops. She didn't invite Marcus over. She hurries downstairs with James to find Marcus and Alexander in the foyer, facing each other like two predators circling territory.
Marcus.
What are you doing here? You forgot this at the cafe. Marcus holds up James's favorite toy. I thought I'd drop it by. But his eyes are taking in the opulent surroundings, clearly reassessing everything he thought he knew about Sophie's situation. That's very thoughtful, Sophie says, accepting the toy. Thank you.
Beautiful home, Marcus comments.
I had no idea you'd done so well for yourself. Before Sophie can respond, Alexander steps forward.
I'm Alexander Sterling, Sophie's husband.
The word husband comes out with unmistakable possessiveness. Marcus's eyes widen as he recognizes the name.
Sterling Industries.
Impressive. Marcus looks between them. Sophie didn't mention she was married. Didn't she?
Alexander's smile is sharp. How strange.
Most people consider their husband worth mentioning. Sophie feels heat rise in her cheeks. We like to keep our personal life private. Understandable, Marcus says, but his tone is cooler now. Well, I should let you get back to your family time.
As soon as Marcus leaves, Alexander turns to Sophie.
Interesting friend. He's just my professor. Your professor who doesn't know you're married? It didn't come up. It didn't come up.
Alexander's voice is dangerously quiet.
Or you deliberately didn't mention it. Why would I deliberately dash? Maybe because you don't want him to know this marriage is fake?
Sophie's mouth falls open.
Are you accusing me of having feelings for Marcus? Are you? The question hangs in the air between them, loaded with jealousy and suspicion. Sophie realizes they're both breathing hard, both furious, both fighting feelings they're not supposed to have. That's rich, coming from the man who spent an hour flirting with his ex-fiancée this morning. I wasn't flirting, dash. Then what do you call it? Being polite to an old friend.
Right.
Just like I was being polite to my professor.
Alexander steps closer, his eyes blazing.
That's my son you were parading around with another man, Sophie. That's my son he was making comments about. Your son? 5 minutes ago you could barely acknowledge he existed, and now you're playing the jealous father.
I'm not playing anything. Alexander's voice is raw.
He's mine, Sophie.
Jure mine.
And I don't like other men thinking they can dash. He stops abruptly, as if realizing what he was about to say. Sophie stares at him, her heart pounding. I'm yours. Since when? Alexander's mask slips completely, revealing something wild and possessive and desperate. Since the moment you walked into that boardroom. Since the moment you kissed me at our wedding. Since the moment you chose to protect our family instead of running away. The admission hangs between them like a lit fuse.
Alexander.
But he's already turning away, running his hands through his hair. Forget it. Forget I said anything. You're right, this is just a contract.
Nothing more.
He walks toward his study, leaving Sophie standing in the foyer with James in her arms and her heart in pieces. Because somewhere between the jealousy and the fighting and the accusations, Sophie realized something terrifying. She doesn't want this to be just a contract anymore.
She wants it to be real. The truth comes out. Sophie spends the night staring at the ceiling, replaying Alexander's words over and over. Jure mine.
The possessiveness in his voice, the raw need in his eyes, it felt real in a way their contract never has. But morning brings doubt. By the time she goes downstairs for breakfast, Alexander is already gone. Mrs. Chen hands her a note. Emergency board meeting. We'll be late tonight.
Coward, Sophie mutters.
She spends the day painting furiously, trying to work through her emotions with color and brushstrokes. The canvas fills with deep reds and dark blues, violent swirls that mirror the chaos in her heart. Maya stops by in the afternoon and finds Sophie covered in paint, with James napping peacefully in his bouncer nearby.
Rough night.
Maya observes, taking in Sophie's appearance and the intense painting. Alexander and I had a fight. About what? Sophie sets down her brush and sinks into a chair. Jealousy.
Ex-fiancé.
The fact that we're both pretending we don't have feelings for each other. So you admit you have feelings for him. I never stopped having feelings for him, Maya. That's the problem.
Maya studies the painting.
This looks angry.
I am angry.
I'm angry at him for leaving me 18 months ago. I'm angry at myself for falling for him again. I'm angry that this stupid fake marriage is making me want things I can't have. Who says you can't have them? Before Sophie can answer, they hear the front door open. Alexander's voice carries from the foyer as he talks to someone on his phone. I don't care what the board thinks, Richard. The marriage is legitimate, and James is my son.
End of discussion. Sophie and Maya exchange glance. Maya mouths he should go and slips out through the garden door.
Sophie quickly cleans her hands and checks her appearance in the hallway mirror. She looks tired and paint-stained, but there's no time to change before Alexander appears. He stops short when he sees her, his expression unreadable.
How long have you been standing there? Long enough. Bored trouble.
Alexander loosens his tie and runs a hand through his hair. Victoria's been feeding them information about our convenient marriage. They're questioning whether I'm fit to run the company. I'm sorry. It's not your fault. But his tone suggests otherwise. An uncomfortable silence stretches between them. Sophie can feel the weight of last night's argument hanging in the air.
Alexander, about last night.
We should talk. His voice is carefully controlled again. But first, there's something you need to know. He pulls out his phone and shows her a series of photographs. Sophie's blood runs cold as she recognizes herself and James at various locations around the city over the past few months. Where did you get these?
I hired a private investigator.
Sophie stares at him in disbelief. You've been having us watched. I needed to know you were safe. That James was healthy and happy. For how long?
Alexander S. Joe Titans.
Since you were 6 months pregnant.
The admission hits Sophie like a physical blow.
She staggers backward, nearly knocking over a vase. 6 months. You knew about James for 6 months before he was born.
Sophie.
You knew I was struggling. You knew I was alone and scared and barely making ends meet. Her voice rises with each word.
You knew, and you did nothing.
I helped. The hospital bills, the anonymous payments dash. Money. You threw money at the problem while I cried myself to sleep every night wondering what I'd done wrong. Sophie is shaking now, 18 months of pain and confusion pouring out.
I thought you were dead, Alexander.
I thought maybe you'd been in an accident or something terrible had happened because I couldn't believe you'd just abandoned me. But you were watching us.
Watching me fall apart.
I was trying to protect you, dash. From what? From being loved. From being part of your life.
Sophie laughs bitterly.
Or were you protecting yourself from having to feel something real? Alexander's composure finally cracks. Yes. Okay. Yes, I was protecting myself.
Because I knew if he came back, he'd destroy you the way every sterling man destroys what he loves.
So you destroyed me anyway. You just did it from a distance. James starts crying in the other room, awakened by their raised voices. Sophie starts toward him, but Alexander blocks her path.
Don't walk away from me, Sophie.
Why not?
You walked away from me.
I was 23 years old and terrified. I woke up next to the most beautiful, genuine, incredible woman I'd ever met, and I panicked. I knew I was falling in love with you, and that scared me more than anything my father ever did to me. Sophie stops, stunned by his honesty. So I ran, Alexander continues, his voice breaking. I told myself I was being noble, that I was saving you from a life of misery. But the truth is, I was a coward who chose fear over love. James's cries grow louder, and Sophie pushes past Alexander to get him. She lifts her son from his crib, her hands still shaking with anger and hurt. You want to know what the real truth is, Alexander, she says, turning to face him with James in her arms. The truth is that I fell in love with you that night too. Completely, stupidly, irrevocably in love. And when you left, it nearly broke me. Alexander takes a step toward her, his gray eyes filled with anguish.
Sophie.
I'm not finished. Her voice is steady now, cold with resolve. The truth is that I've spent 18 months trying to hate you. Trying to convince myself that what we had wasn't real, that you were just using me. But even when I was signing those adoption papers, even when I was ready to give up James, I couldn't stop loving you. Tears are streaming down her face now, but she doesn't stop. And the truth is that this fake marriage, this contract, this whole arrangement, it's killing me. Because every day I have to pretend I don't want more. Every day I have to watch you hold James and know you're only here out of obligation. Every day I have to live with the fact that you chose duty over love. Alexander reaches for her, but Sophie steps back. But I can't do it anymore, Alexander.
I can't pretend di season.
I can't live in a loveless marriage, even if it means James loses his security. What are you saying? Sophie looks down at James, who stopped crying and is looking between his parents with wide, curious eyes. I'm saying that maybe the adoption was the right choice after all. Maybe James deserves better than parents who can't even be honest about their feelings.
No.
Alexander's voice is sharp with panic.
Sophie, no.
You can't take him away from me. I'm not taking him away. I'm setting all of us free. Sophie moves toward the door, but Alexander blocks her path again.
Please don't go.
Give me one good reason to stay. Alexander stares at her for a long moment, his chest rising and falling rapidly. Sophie can see him struggling, see the war between his fear and his heart playing out on his face. Because I love you, he whispers finally. Because I've loved you since that first night, and I've been too afraid to admit it. Because watching you with James, seeing you defend our family, seeing your strength and your grace and your incredible heart, it's made me realize that the only thing I'm really afraid of is losing you.
Sophie's breath catches. Alexander.
I hired those investigators because I couldn't stay away, Sophie. I knew where you lived because I used to drive by your apartment just to see your lights on and know you were okay. I paid your hospital bills because I was dying knowing you were in pain and I couldn't be there with you. He steps closer, his voice raw with emotion. I offered you this marriage because it was the only way I could think of to keep you and James in my life without risking the kind of love that destroyed my family. But I can't keep pretending anymore. I can't keep lying to myself or to you. What are you saying? Alexander cups her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. I'm saying I don't want a fake marriage anymore, Sophie.
I want a real one. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep holding you every night.
I want to watch James grow up with parents who love each other, not just tolerate each other. Sophie's heart is pounding so hard she's sure he can hear it. I'm saying I want to be worthy of the second chance you've given me. I want to be the man you fell in love with that night, not the coward who ran away. And if you get scared again,
if you decide I'm better off without you,
then you can remind me of this conversation. You can remind me that love isn't about being safe, it's about being brave enough to choose each other, even when it's terrifying. Sophie searches his face, looking for any sign of doubt or deception. But all she sees is love, raw, honest, overwhelming love.
I'm still angry at you, she whispers.
I know. I'll spend the rest of my life making up for the time I wasted. And I'm still scared that this is too good to be true. Then we'll be scared together. Alexander leans down and kisses her forehead, then her cheeks, tasting the salt of her tears.
I love you, Sophie Miller Sterling. I love your fierce heart and your incredible talent and the way you make James laugh.
I love that you chose to protect our family even when you had every reason to walk away. Sophie looks down at James, who's watching them with Alexander's gray eyes, then back at her husband.
I love you too, she whispers.
Even when I wanted to hate you, I loved you. This time when Alexander kisses her, it's nothing like their staged kiss at the wedding. It's desperate and tender and full of 18 months of longing. Sophie kisses him back with everything she has, pouring all her forgiveness and hope and love into the connection between them. When they break apart, both are breathing hard. So what happens now? Sophie asks. Alexander takes James from her arms and settles him against his shoulder, then wraps his other arm around Sophie. "Now we stop pretending," he says simply. "Now we build the real marriage we both want." Sophie nods, feeling like a weight has been lifted from her chest. They have a lot to work through, a lot of hurt to heal. But for the first time since she walked into that boardroom, she believes they might actually make it. "There's just one thing," Alexander says as they head upstairs.
What is it?
"We need to have a talk with Victoria Blackwood. Because I have a feeling she's not going to give up easily." Sophie looks up at him with a smile that's equal parts love and determination. Let her try. She has no idea what she's up against. The choice, complete script. Sophie wakes up alone in the guest bedroom, momentarily disoriented. Then she remembers, last night, the fight, Alexander's confession. Her heart races as she replays his words, "I love you." She checks her phone. It's barely 6 a.m., but she can hear movement downstairs. When she peeks out her window, she sees Alexander in the garden with James, both of them still in their pajamas. Sophie quickly gets dressed and joins them outside. Alexander looks up when he hears her footsteps, his expression uncertain. "I woke up early and heard him fussing," he explains. "I didn't want him to wake you." "Thank you." They stand awkwardly for a moment, the intensity of last night's revelation hanging between them.
In the morning light, Sophie wonders if she dreamed the whole thing. About what he said last night, Alexander begins.
Sophie's heart sinks.
Here comes the backtracking, the rational daily thoughts that will undo everything.
"I meant every word," he finishes. Relief floods through her. "So did I." Alexander hands James to her and runs his hands through his hair.
I need to tell you something else. Victoria's planning something big.
My sources say she's called a press conference for this afternoon.
What kind of press conference?
The kind designed to destroy my reputation and our marriage.
Alexander's Joe Titans. She has found something, Sophie.
Something she thinks will prove our relationship is fake. Before Sophie can respond, Alexander's phone buzzes. He checks it and his face goes pale.
What is it? Christina.
She wants to meet for coffee. Says it's urgent. Sophie's stomach drops. You think she's working with Victoria?
I don't know.
But I need to find out. Alexander looks at her intently.
Will you come with me?
To meet your ex-fiancé? Are you sure that's a good idea? I'm sure I don't want to face whatever this is without you. An hour later, they're sitting in an upscale cafe downtown, James sleeping peacefully in his stroller between them. Christina arrives looking perfectly put together as always, but there's something different about her expression, something almost guilty. "Thank you for coming," she says, sliding into the booth across from them. Her eyes linger on Alexander's hand covering Sophie's on the table. "I see the rumors about your reconciliation are true."
What rumors?
Sophie asks. Christina pulls out her phone and shows them a gossip blog post titled, "Sterling's Second Chance at Love. Inside sources say marriage is real after all. Someone's been talking to the press about your relationship, painting it as a genuine love story that started 18 months ago." Christina's tone is carefully neutral. Very romantic.
Alexander and Sophie exchange glance.
They never spoke to any reporters. "Why are you showing us this?" Alexander asks.
Christina takes a deep breath.
"Because Victoria Blackwood offered me $50,000 to confirm that your marriage is fake." Sophie's heart stops. "What did you tell her?" "Nothing. Yet." Christina looks directly at Sophie. "But she's not going to stop, Sophie. She has photographs of you at the adoption agency. She has financial records showing Alexander's payments during your pregnancy. She's building a case that this whole thing is an elaborate scheme to secure his inheritance." "It doesn't matter what she thinks she can prove," Alexander says coldly. "The marriage is legal. But is it real?"
Christina S. question hangs in the air. Sophie feels Alexander S. and tighten over hers.
This is their moment of truth. Do they keep pretending, or do they trust Christina with their secret? "Yes," Sophie says firmly. "It's real." Christina studies her face for a long moment, then nods.
I believe you.
"Which is why I'm here." She pulls a flash drive from her purse and slides it across the table. Victoria's been having you both followed for weeks. These are copies of all her files, photos, financial records, witness statements. Everything she plans to use against you.
Alexander stares at the flash drive.
Why would you help us? Because despite everything between us, I care about you, Alexander. And because Victoria Blackwood is a vindictive witch who destroys people for sport.
Christina glances at James.
That little boy deserves better than having his parentage splashed across tabloids.
What does Victoria want from you?
Sophie asks. She wants me to go on record saying you and Alexander never seemed like a real couple. That he was clearly still in love with me. Christina's smile is rueful. The irony is, watching you two together these past few weeks, I can see something I never had with him. Which is?
Real love. The messy, complicated, all-consuming kind.
Christina stands to leave. Alexander was always holding back with me. Controlled, careful, keeping parts of himself locked away. But with you. She looks at Sophie. With you, he's completely unguarded. That's not something you can fake. After Christina leaves, Sophie and Alexander sit in stunned silence. We need to get ahead of this, Alexander says finally. Whatever Victoria's planning, we can't let her control the narrative. What do you suggest?
We tell our story first. The real story.
Sophie's heart pounds. All of it.
The one-night stand, the pregnancy, the fake marriage proposal.
All of it. We show them that real love is complicated and messy and doesn't always follow a straight line. Alexander, if we do this, there's no going back.
The whole world will know the truth.
Good. I'm tired of hiding, Sophie. I'm tired of pretending our love story is something to be ashamed of. They drive home in tense silence, both lost in thought. As they pull into their driveway, Sophie sees Maya's car already there. Maya meets them at the door, her face grim. We have a problem. Victoria's press conference moved up to noon, and she's releasing a preview to build buzz. She hands Sophie her phone. The gossip site now shows a photo of Sophie at the adoption agency with a headline that makes her blood run cold. Billionaire's wife tried to give away his baby, marriage of convenience exposed. They're going to destroy us, Sophie whispers. Not if we don't let them, Alexander says firmly. He pulls out his own phone and starts dialing.
Richard, it's Alexander.
I need you to set up a live interview for this morning.
Every major network.
Sophie stares at him. What are you doing? Something I should have done 18 months ago. I'm fighting for what I want instead of running away from it. The next few hours are a whirlwind of preparation. Alexander's PR team arrives to help craft their message while Sophie tries to calm her nerves. They decide to do the interview from their home, in the garden where Alexander was playing with James that first morning.
Are you ready for this?
Alexander asks as the camera crew finishes setting up. Sophie looks at their beautiful home, at James playing on a blanket nearby, at the man she loves despite everything they've been through.
As ready as you ever be.
The interviewer is Sarah Chen, a respected journalist known for her fair but thorough questioning. She starts with the basics, how they met, their whirlwind romance, the unexpected pregnancy. Mr. Sterling, why did you leave Sophie when she was pregnant? Alexander's hand finds Sophie's, and she sees him make the choice to be completely honest. Because I was a coward, he says simply. I was 23, terrified of becoming like my father, and convinced I would destroy anything beautiful in my life. So I ran, thinking I was protecting Sophie from me. But you kept tabs on her? I couldn't stay away completely. I hired investigators to make sure she and James were safe and healthy. I paid her medical bills anonymously. I told myself I was helping from a distance.
And the marriage proposal?
Ms. Miller, when Alexander offered you $50 million to marry him, what was your reaction?
Sophie takes a deep breath.
Anger. Hurt. But also, hope. Because despite everything, I never stopped loving him. So this was never about Alexander's inheritance? The inheritance was a factor, Alexander admits. But by the time I made the proposal, it wasn't about the money anymore. It was about finding a way to keep my family together, even if I was too scared to admit I wanted a real marriage. When did that change? Sophie and Alexander look at each other, sharing a smile. When I realized that Sophie was braver than I was, Alexander says. She was willing to fight for our family when I was still hiding behind contracts and legal arrangements. She made me want to be worthy of her courage. The interviewer spends another 20 minutes asking about their current relationship, their plans for the future, their response to Victoria Blackwood's allegations. The truth is complex, Sophie says. Our love story isn't a fairy tale. It's messy and complicated, and we made mistakes. But it's real. Our son is real. Our commitment to each other is real. And to those who say this is all an elaborate performance, Alexander looks directly into the camera. I can't control what people choose to believe. I can only tell you that I love my wife and son more than my own life. Everything else is just noise. As the interview wraps up, Sophie feels a weight lifting from her shoulders. Whatever happens now, they've told the truth. They don't have to wait long for Victoria's response. Her press conference, now clearly upstaged, is a bitter affair where she makes increasingly desperate accusations that sound hollow after Alexander and Sophie's honest interview. The public isn't buying it, Maya reports, scrolling through social media. The response to your interview is overwhelmingly positive. People are calling it brave and refreshingly honest. But Sophie barely hears her. She's watching Alexander play with James on the living room floor, seeing the pure joy on both their faces, and realizing something important. We did it, she says quietly. Did what? Alexander looks up from where he's making James giggle. We chose each other. Despite the fear, despite the complications, despite everything that could go wrong, we chose love. Alexander gets up and pulls her into his arms.
Best choice uno ever made.
As he kisses her, Sophie thinks about how different this moment is from their first kiss 18 months ago. That was passion and possibility. This is deeper. It's commitment, it's partnership, it's the choice to keep choosing each other every day.
So what now?
Sophie asks.
Now we'll live happily ever after.
Alexander suggests with a grin. I don't think it works that way. No, but we can try. Outside, rain starts to fall, but inside their home, surrounded by love and laughter and the promise of tomorrow, Sophie has never felt warmer. The next morning, Sophie wakes up to find Alexander already gone, but there's a note on his pillow, gone to handle some business. Back by lunch. I love you. She spends the morning playing with James and working on a new painting, this one bright and hopeful, full of warm colors that seem to glow with inner light. Around noon, she hears Alexander's car in the driveway. But when she looks out the window, she sees he's not alone. An older man in an expensive suit is getting out of the passenger seat, his face stern and disapproving. Sophie's blood runs cold. She recognizes him from newspaper photos, Richard Sterling Sr., Alexander's father. She quickly picks up James and heads downstairs, arriving just as Alexander opens the front door. Father, Alexander says coolly.
Sophie, this is my father, Richard Sterling. Father, this is my wife Sophie, and our son James.
Richard Sterling's cold gray eyes, so much like Alexander's but without any warmth, sweep over Sophie and James dismissively. So this is the woman who's caused so much trouble. Sophie hasn't caused any trouble, Alexander's voice is ice. She's made my life better in every possible way. Has she? Because from where I stand, your reputation is in shambles, your inheritance is in jeopardy, and you're married to a nobody with a bastard child.
Detesseno.
Alexander steps between his father and Sophie, his body vibrating with controlled rage. You will not speak about my wife and son that way.
Your wife.
Richard laughs coldly. This was supposed to be a business arrangement, Alexander.
A temporary inconvenience to secure your inheritance.
Instead, you've let your emotions get involved and made a spectacle of yourself. Sophie feels like she's been slapped.
A business arrangement.
Richard turns his calculating gaze on her. You didn't know.
How refreshing.
Yes, my dear, this whole marriage was meant to be temporary. Alexander just needed to produce an heir and a wife to satisfy the terms of the family trust. Once that was accomplished, you were to be quietly divorced and compensated for your trouble. That's not true, Alexander says desperately, turning to Sophie. It was never supposed to be temporary. Sophie, you have to believe me. But Sophie is staring at him with growing horror. Is that why you proposed? Because your father told you to. Sophie, please, let me explain. Explain what? That everything you said was a lie.
That I'm just another business transaction to you? No. Sophie, I love you.
Everything I told you was true. But Sophie is already backing toward the stairs, James clutched protectively in her arms.
The betrayal cuts deeper than anything she has ever felt.
I need to think, she whispers. I need some space.
Sophie, don't do this.
Don't let him destroy what we have. But Sophie is already running upstairs, her heart breaking all over again. An hour later, Maya finds her throwing clothes into a suitcase while James naps in his crib.
Sophie, what are you doing?
Leaving.
I can't stay here, Maya.
I can't pretend this is real when it's all been an elaborate lie. But what about yesterday? What about the interview?
What about Alexander telling you he loves you? Sophie pauses in her packing, tears streaming down her face. I don't know what is real anymore.
Maybe the interview was just another performance. Maybe his confession was just another manipulation.
You don't believe that. I don't know what I believe.
Maya sits on the bed, watching her friend fall apart.
Where will you go? Away from here.
Away from him. Somewhere I can think clearly. Downstairs, they can hear raised voices, Alexander and his father still arguing. Sophie tries to block out the words, but fragments drift up, disappointed, weak, throwing everything away. Sophie, Maya says gently, what if you're wrong? What if Alexander really does love you? Then he should have trusted me enough to tell me the truth from the beginning. Sophie finishes packing and picks up James, who stirs sleepily in her arms. As they head for the door, Alexander appears at the top of the stairs.
Sophie, please don't go.
She stops but doesn't turn around.
Give me one good reason why I should stay. Because uno love you.
Because James needs both his parents. Because what we have is real, regardless of how it started. Sophie finally turns to face him, her heart breaking at the anguish in his eyes. How do I know that's not just another line, Alexander? How do I know you're not just saying what you think I want to hear? Because I'm willing to give up everything for you. Before Sophie can ask what he means, Richard Sterling's voice booms from downstairs.
Alexander.
Stop this nonsense and come sign these papers. Alexander looks between Sophie and the stairs, and Sophie sees the exact moment he makes his choice. He walks past her toward the stairs, and Sophie's heart shatters completely. But then he stops and turns back. Actually, no. His voice is stronger now, more certain.
Sophie, wait.
He disappears downstairs, and Sophie can hear him clearly from the foyer. Father, I'm not signing anything. In fact, I renounce the inheritance completely. I don't want your money, your companies, or your conditions. I want my wife and son, and if you can't accept that, then we have nothing more to discuss. Don't be ridiculous, Alexander. You're throwing away billions of dollars for a woman you barely know. I'm choosing love over money.
I'm choosing the family you've built over the legacy you want to force on me.
And if that makes me weak in your eyes, then I'm proud to be weak. Sophie hears footsteps, then the front door slamming. A moment later, Alexander appears on the stairs again, this time with a smile on his face. He's gone, he says simply. Sophie stares at him, hardly daring to hope. You really gave up the inheritance?
I never wanted it.
I only thought I needed it. Alexander climbs the stairs slowly, giving her space to run if she wants to. Sophie, I know I should have told you about my father's original plan. But I swear to you, from the moment I made that proposal, it stopped being about the inheritance and started being about keeping you and James in my life. How do I know you're telling the truth? Because I just gave up billions of dollars to prove it. Alexander stops a few feet away from her. Because I'm standing here with nothing to offer you but my love, and I'm still begging you to stay. Sophie looks into his eyes and sees no calculation, no manipulation, just raw, honest love and fear that she might leave him anyway.
I'm scared, she whispers.
So am I. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. Sophie sets down her suitcase and steps into his arms, feeling like she's finally coming home. I love you too, she whispers against his chest.
Even when he won't to hate you, I love you.
Then stay. Please. Let me spend the rest of my life proving that choosing love over everything else was the best decision I ever made. Sophie looks up at him, seeing their future in his eyes. Not perfect, but real and true and theirs. Okay, she says. I'll stay. As Alexander kisses her, Sophie realizes that sometimes the best love stories don't start with a meet-cute or a fairy tale romance. Sometimes they start with mistakes and second chances and the courage to choose each other again and again, even when it's scary. And sometimes, that's the most beautiful love story of all.
The real beginning.
1 year later, Sophie stands in front of her easel in the converted art studio, adding final touches to a painting that will be displayed in her first solo exhibition next week. The canvas shows a family, a man, woman, and small child, painted in warm, vibrant colors that seem to glow with life and love. It's beautiful, Alexander says from the doorway. Sophie turns to smile at him. He's holding 2-year-old James, who's babbling excitedly about something only he understands.
Mama paint.
James declares, reaching toward the canvas. That's right, baby. Mama's painting our family. Alexander sets James down and wraps his arms around Sophie from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. Are you nervous about the exhibition? Terrified, Sophie admits. But it's a good kind of terrified. The past year has been everything Sophie never dared to dream. She returned to art school and graduated with honors. Alexander surprised her by converting the mansion's east wing into a proper art gallery where she could display her work. The exhibition next week will be her debut as a professional artist, and 3 pieces have already sold to collectors. But more than professional success, Sophie has found personal happiness she didn't think was possible. Their marriage, their real marriage, is built on honesty, trust, and the kind of deep love that grows stronger with time.
Dada, up. James tugs on Alexander's pant leg.
In a minute, buddy.
I'm hugging your mama.
James considers this, then wraps his tiny arms around both their legs. Hug. Sophie laughs, her heart overflowing with contentment. These quiet moments of domestic happiness are more precious to her than any gallery showing or professional recognition. I have news, Alexander says, his voice carefully casual.
Good news or bad news?
Depends on your perspective. Victoria Blackwood's company went bankrupt last month. She's being investigated for fraud. Sophie turns in his arms. How do you feel about that?
Like karma is real and justice sometimes prevails. Alexander's expression grows serious.
But mostly I feel grateful that we don't have to worry about her anymore. We never did. She couldn't touch what we have.
Alexander kisses her forehead.
No, she couldn't. They're interrupted by the doorbell. Alexander frowns. They aren't expecting anyone. I'll get it, Sophie says, but Alexander shakes his head.
Stay here with James. Il endolit. Sophie can hear voices from downstairs. Alexander is calm and controlled. Another man is sharp and demanding.
Her heart sinks as she recognizes the second voice.
Richard Sterling is Alexander's father.
She picks up James and they go to the top of the stairs, where they can hear but not be seen.
You look well, Alexander.
Father. Alexander's tone is ice cold.
What do you want?
Can't a father visit his son and grandson? You've never shown interest in visiting before.
Richard Sterling is laugh is harsh.
You can hardly blame me for being cautious. The circumstances of your marriage were unusual. The circumstances of my marriage are none of your business. Everything about this family is my business. I built this empire, this name, this legacy. Sophie can practically hear Alexander's jaw clench. And I've continued it. The company is more profitable than ever. Yes, well, that brings me to why I'm here. There's a rustling of papers. I've had new documents drawn up. Since your marriage has proven legitimate, and you've produced an heir, I'm prepared to formalize the inheritance transfer.
I don't want your money.
The words hang in the air, and Sophie's heart stops.
I beg your pardon. You heard me.
I don't want the inheritance.
I don't want anything from you.
Don't be ridiculous, Alexander. This is a multi-billion-dollar fortune we're discussing. A fortune that comes with strings attached. A fortune that's been used to control and manipulate our family for generations.
Alexander's voice is strong, certain.
I won't be part of that cycle anymore.
Sophie hears Richard's sharp intake of breath.
You're making a mistake, son. No, I'm making a choice.
I choose my wife and son over your money.
I choose love over legacy.
I choose to break the sterling curse once and for all.
You'll regret this. The only thing I regret is waiting so long to do it. Sophie hears footsteps, then the front door slamming.
She waits a moment before going downstairs with James.
Alexander is standing in the foyer, staring at the legal documents his father left behind.
Alexander, are you okay?
He looks up at her, and his smile is the most genuine she's ever seen.
I'm perfect. We're free, Sophie.
Completely free. But the money dash. We don't need his money.
I have my own company, my own investments.
We'll be more than comfortable. Alexander takes James from her arms. And more importantly, our son will grow up knowing his father chose love over greed.
Sophie feels tears prick her eyes.
Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. That evening, they're getting ready for bed when Alexander pulls a small velvet box from his dresser drawer.
What is this?
Sophie asks.
Your real wedding ring. Sophie's breath catches.
The ring she's been wearing is beautiful, but it was chosen by Alexander's lawyers as part of their contract. This ring is completely different, a vintage design with intricate details and a stone that catches the light like captured starfire. It was my grandmother's, Alexander explains. The only woman in our family who had a truly happy marriage. I've been saving it for when our marriage became real. It's been real for months, Sophie protests. I know. But I wanted to wait until I could offer it to you freely, without any conditions or contracts or family obligations. Alexander gets down on one knee, making Sophie gasp.
Sophie Miller Sterling, will you marry me again?
For real this time, with nothing but love as our foundation. We're already married. Then will you stay married to me? Will you choose me every day for the rest of our lives? Sophie is crying now, overwhelmed by the magnitude of his gesture. Yes. Yes, of course, yes. Alexander slips the ring onto her finger, and it fits perfectly. Of course it does. Everything about them fits perfectly now. I love you, he says, rising to kiss her. I love you too. Later that night, as they lie in bed together, their bed, in their bedroom, because Sophie moved out of the guest room months ago, Sophie thinks about how far they've come.
Alexander.
Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't walked into that boardroom? Every day. And every day I'm grateful that you did. Even though it was messy and complicated. Especially because it was messy and complicated. The best things in life usually are. Sophie curls closer to him, listening to his heartbeat.
I have something to tell you. What is that?
Sophie takes a deep breath, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. James is going to be a big brother. Alexander goes completely still. Sophie, are you saying?
I'm pregnant. 8 weeks.
Alexander sits up abruptly, staring at her in the moonlight streaming through their bedroom window.
Are you happy?
Sophie asks, suddenly nervous. Instead of answering, Alexander kisses her with a passion that takes her breath away. When they break apart, both are laughing and crying at the same time. I'm ecstatic, he finally manages. Terrified, but ecstatic. Good terrified or bad terrified. The best kind of terrified. My life is so full of blessings I can barely contain them, kind of terrified. 3 months later, Sophie's art exhibition opens to rave reviews. Alexander stands proudly beside her as collectors and critics examine her work, his arm wrapped protectively around her growing belly.
She is incredible, Sophie hears Someone whisper.
Such raw emotion in her brushstrokes. The family series is particularly moving, another voice adds. You can feel the love radiating from the canvas. Sophie smiles and places her hand over Alexander's on her stomach. Their daughter kicks in response, and Alexander's face lights up with wonder. She likes the attention, he murmurs in Sophie's ear. She gets that from her father. Maya approaches with a glass of sparkling cider for Sophie and champagne for Alexander. 3 paintings sold already, she announces proudly. I think it's safe to say your career as an artist is officially launched. Thank you for believing in me, Sophie says, squeezing her best friend's hand. Thank you for proving that fairy tales can come true, even when they start with contracts and fake marriages. Later that evening, after the gallery has closed and the guests have gone home, Sophie and Alexander stand alone among her paintings. James is with the babysitter, giving them a rare moment of quiet together. I'm proud of you, Alexander says, pulling her close. Not just for tonight, but for everything. For your strength, your talent, your courage to take a chance on us. I'm proud of us, Sophie corrects. For choosing each other, for fighting for our family, for building something real and lasting. They're interrupted by Sophie's phone buzzing. It's a text from Maya. Turn on Channel 7. Victoria Blackwood just got arrested on live television. They watch from the gallery's office as Victoria is led away in handcuffs, her empire crumbling around her. The reporter explains that she's been charged with fraud, embezzlement, and corporate espionage. Feel bad for her? Alexander asks. No, Sophie says honestly. She chose to destroy instead of create. She chose hate instead of love. That's not our problem anymore. 6 months later, Sophie stands in the nursery they've prepared for their daughter, painting one final mural on the wall. It's a garden scene with flowers and butterflies, bright and hopeful and full of life. Perfect, Alexander says from behind her. Sophie turns to find him holding James, who's wearing a Big Brother t-shirt and grinning proudly.
Baby sister.
James asks, pointing at Sophie's belly.
Soon, buddy.
Very soon. As if summoned by her brother's voice, their daughter chooses that moment to make her presence known with a particularly strong kick. Sophie gasps and grabs Alexander's hand, placing it on her stomach.
She's ready to meet the Stati Uniti, Sophie laughs.
Good thing we finished the nursery just in time. They spend the rest of the afternoon assembling the last pieces of baby furniture while James helps by trying to eat the instruction manual. It's chaotic and messy and perfect. That evening, as they're putting James to bed, he looks up at Sophie with serious eyes.
Mama, read story.
Sophie settles into the rocking chair while Alexander perches on the edge of the bed. She opens James's favorite book, a simple story about a family of bears, and begins to read. Once upon a time, there was a papa bear, a mama bear, and a little baby bear who loved each other very much. As she reads, Sophie thinks about their own story. It didn't start with once upon a time, and it probably won't end with happily ever after. But it's theirs, messy, complicated, real, and filled with more love than she ever thought possible. 2 weeks later, Sophie wakes up at 3 in the morning with the undeniable feeling that their daughter has decided it's time to join the world. Alexander, she whispers, shaking him gently. I think it's time. He's instantly awake, alert and ready. Are you sure? Another contraction answers his question. I'll call Maya to watch James, he says, already reaching for his phone. The next few hours are a blur of hospital rooms, breathing exercises, and Alexander holding her hand through every contraction. When their daughter finally arrives at sunrise, perfect and healthy and absolutely beautiful, Sophie thinks her heart might burst from happiness. She looks just like you, Alexander whispers, tears streaming down his face as he holds their daughter for the first time. She has your eyes, Sophie corrects, though their daughter's eyes are still the cloudy blue of all newborns. What should we call her? They've had months to discuss names, but nothing has felt quite right until now. Hope, Sophie says suddenly. Her name is Hope. Alexander looks at their daughter, then at Sophie, then back at Hope. Hope Sterling, he says, testing the name.
It's perfect.
James meets his sister that afternoon, approaching her hospital bassinet with the serious concentration of a 2-year-old. Baby sister, he announces after careful consideration. That's right, buddy.
This is Hope.
James gently pats Hope's tiny hand.
Pretty baby. Sophie feels tears prick her eyes.
Her children will grow up together, will never know what it's like to be alone or unwanted. They'll have the family she and Alexander both dreamed of but never thought they could have. 1 year later, Sophie stands in their garden watching Alexander push James on the swing while Hope naps in her stroller nearby. Maya is setting up a picnic table for their small celebration. It's the 3rd anniversary of the day Sophie walked into that boardroom and found Alexander waiting for her. Hard to believe it's been 3 years, Maya says, following Sophie's gaze. Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago. Any regrets?
Sophie considers the question seriously.
Their journey hasn't been easy. There have been arguments, misunderstandings, moments of doubt. But through it all, they've chosen each other. None, she says finally.
Not a single one.
Alexander looks over and waves, his smile brighter than the summer sun. James squeals with delight as the swing goes higher, his laughter carrying across the garden. I never thought I'd say this, Maya admits, but you two were meant to be together. Even when you were both too stubborn to see it. We just needed time to grow up. To realize that love isn't about perfection, it's about choosing to work through the imperfections together. Alexander and James come running over, both grass-stained and grinning.
Mama, swing.
James announces proudly.
Esau, baby.
You were so brave. Just like his mother, Alexander says, kissing Sophie's temple. As they settle down for their picnic, Hope waking up just in time to join them, Sophie realizes that this moment is exactly what she was trying to capture in all those paintings over the years, the feeling of being completely, utterly content. Their love story didn't start with a fairy tale meet-cute or end with a perfect wedding. It started with mistakes and fear and running away. But it's continuing, will always continue, with something better than perfection, truth, commitment, and the daily choice to love each other through whatever comes next. What are you thinking about? Alexander asks quietly, bouncing Hope on his knee while James builds towers with his blocks. How grateful I am that you offered me that ridiculous contract. Ridiculous. $50 million to fake a marriage? Completely ridiculous.
Sophie grins.
But it got us here, so I guess I can forgive you.
Just forgive me.
Well, maybe I can do a little better than forgiveness.
Alexander's eyes darken with promise.
How much better? Why don't you put the kids down for their naps and find out? As the sun sets over their garden, their family gathered close, Sophie knows that whatever challenges lie ahead, they'll face them together. They've built something real and lasting, something that no amount of money or power could buy. Their real beginning started in a boardroom with a contract and a desperate proposal. But their real story, the one they'll tell their children and grandchildren, is about two people brave enough to choose love over fear, again and again, for the rest of their lives.
Alexander.
Sophie says as they head inside, James running ahead while Alexander carries a sleepy Hope. Yes. Do you think we'll have more adventures? Alexander stops and looks at her, his gray eyes twinkling with mischief and love. Mrs. Sterling, I can guarantee it.
Good adventures or bad adventures. The best kind, the kind we'll face together.
Sophie smiles and takes his free hand as they walk into their home.
Through the windows, she can see her art studio where new canvases wait for tomorrow's inspiration.
She can see the nursery where Hope will grow up surrounded by love. She can see the living room where James will learn to read and dream and become whoever he wants to be. But mostly, she sees Alexander beside her, solid and real and committed to building a life that's beautiful in its imperfection. 5 years later, Sophie stands in the same garden, but now it's filled with the laughter of 3 children. James is 7 and teaching 5-year-old Hope how to catch butterflies, while their youngest, 3-year-old Michael, toddles between them trying to keep up. Alexander appears beside her, sliding his arms around her waist from behind. Remember when it was just us and James? He murmurs in her ear.
Barely, Sophie laughs.
Now look at us, we're completely outnumbered. Best decision we ever made. Which one? Having more kids or falling in love? Both. Definitely both. They watch their children play, and Sophie marvels at how each one is unique. James has Alexander's intensity but Sophie's artistic eye. Hope is fearless and determined, with a smile that could charm anyone. Michael is gentle and thoughtful, always watching and learning. They're going to change the world, Sophie says softly. just like their mother did. Sophie turns in his arms.
Didn't he change the world, Alexander?
I just changed your world. Same thing, he says, kissing her forehead.
You are my world.
Later that evening, after the children are asleep and the house is quiet, Sophie finds Alexander on their bedroom balcony, the same balcony where they first fell in love all those years ago. Couldn't sleep, she asks, joining him at the railing.
Just thinking.
About what? Alexander pulls her close, and they look out over the city lights together, just like they did that first magical night. About how different my life would be if you hadn't walked into that boardroom. About how close I came to losing the best thing that ever happened to me because I was too afraid to take a chance. But you did take a chance. Eventually. Eventually, he agrees. But I almost waited too long. Sophie thinks about all the moments between then and now. The fights, the makeups, the quiet domestic mornings, the passionate nights, the children they've brought into the world, the dreams they've built together. It was exactly the right timing, she says finally. We both needed to be ready for this kind of love.
This kind of love. The forever kind.
They choose each other every single day, kind.
They build something beautiful together, kind.
Alexander turns to face her fully, his hands framing her face in the moonlight.
Sophie Miller Sterling, will you kiss me again tomorrow? And the day after that?
Every day for the rest of our lives. Sophie rises on her toes and kisses him, tasting the promise of all their tomorrows. Yes, she whispers against his lips. Always yes. As they head back inside to their sleeping children and their shared life, Sophie realizes that some love stories never really end. They just keep beginning over and over again, with each choice to stay, to fight, to love despite the odds. And this love story, theirs, is just getting started. Don't forget to rate this story and subscribe if you want more love stories like this one.